welcome to our channel. If you remember in the last video we talked about an angry gentleman who said, "I gave my life, but all I got was ingratitude." You know, the one who paid off his girlfriend's debts, set up a business for her, but in the end was abandoned. Maybe most of you sided with him and said, "What a shame for the guy." But today, let's hear the other side of the same relationship, the so-called ungrateful woman. And honestly, what I heard completely changed the story for me. When I listened to the woman, a completely different picture emerged.
By the way, my experiences show me that in situations like this, you should never listen to just one side.
Yes, everyone has their own side of the story. I understood that too.
As experts, we can't let our emotions get involved anyway. We need to listen to events objectively.
The woman says, "I had made a plan to pay off those debts. I was going to fight my own battle, but one morning I woke up. My debt had been paid. He didn't even ask me. He waited for my gratitude, but I felt like my hands were tied." She actually says, "I felt inadequate." It's the same situation with the shop issue. The woman says, "That was my dream, but it became his project. He even decided on the decoration and the signboard." She says, "I felt like a guest in my own shop." So rather than ingratitude, what's really happening here is being ignored.
Actually, things went on just as I predicted. The process. Now, when we listen to the other side of the coin, a more reasonable picture emerges. Now, what did the man say in our first case? He said, "I did everything for her, but she left me and went away." He said she was extremely ungrateful. He used expressions like "such ingratitude." But the woman on the other side of the relationship describes the situation like this. She characterizes it this way. "I felt like I was being occupied. It was too much for me and I couldn't take it anymore." Now, from the outside, most people might say this to the woman, "What more do you want?" But here, look, what matters in relationships is harmony, and naturally as individuals within the relationship, we will bring each other into being. If we can be ourselves, we will feel a sense of belonging in the relationship, and we can create harmony. This is only possible in this way anyway. With the story I just told, I can clearly see that there are obvious differences in the way the woman and the man view the events. And they couldn't manage this. Alright, let me play detective a bit and ask you this. So the man, in a way he thought was good for her. While he was doing these good things for her, while he was being proactive for her, the woman was setting boundaries. Why did she have such a hard time? I mean, she could have clearly taught him the boundaries within the relationship. And honestly, I feel like the man could be accommodating about this as well.
If I were to share my own opinion, just like the example you gave, in fact, I ask you for 1 coffee. You give me 10 teas? Yes, I think that's outside of expectations. Me too.
You're not actually doing what I asked for.
Yes. I also want to talk about her past. I connect it to this, your question. When we look at her past, we see an authoritarian father figure. She was never allowed to make decisions. She was always expected to be the obedient, well-behaved girl. That's why, at the beginning of the relationship, she mistook the man's dominant attitude for a strong character and couldn't speak up. It was only when she started to feel suffocated that she reacted.
Yes. So she's acting out of a sense of panic. When making her decision, she thinks, "No, this is heading in the same direction again. I need to get out of this."
Yes, at first she thinks it's strength. But later it turns into something that makes her uncomfortable.
Now, in our video about infidelity, you used a phrase like this: "People who resemble our parents." We choose people like that for ourselves.
Scientifically sounds absurd, but it exists. Did you know that, Professor?
Look, the human brain doesn't instinctively choose what's good, but rather what's familiar. Frankly, I attribute it to this. In other words, with this choice and her decision to end the relationship here, the woman actually wanted to break this cycle. Yes, it's a radical decision for her, but she thought she needed to do it. So, actually the reaction, it's not just towards her boyfriend, it's even more so. She actually has more of a reaction towards herself, and what does she say there? "I can't go through all this over and over again. Once again, I put myself into something like this. I need to get out of this now." There's an underlying message like that. Actually, in her reaction here. Naturally, her past experiences have caused certain traumas for her. And this situation has scared her. For example, it might not have been like this for someone else. I mean, they could have been a very compatible couple. Because their perspectives on events are different, and because their experiences and traumas are different, incompatibility has emerged. We can say that. Okay, let's also examine this together. So, do you think this is a healthy effort to become an adult? Or, for the woman, has she developed a defense mechanism against the existing traumatic situation? The woman?
Actually, it's a mix of both. The woman grew up in a home where financial dependence turned into emotional slavery. She witnessed the mentality of whoever pays gives the orders. That's why every good deed the man did made her feel like she owed him, like a promissory note.
Alright, now look. At this point, the woman is actually generalizing a bit. Do you realize that? Maybe the man doesn't have any such intention at all. He just wants to do things for her, to give to her, and to make her happy. But the woman is generalizing. That's actually how trauma affects our lives, at least in part. Our lives. No matter what it's about, when we encounter situations similar to our trauma, we think they will be the same and want to escape from them as quickly as possible. So when we look at it from this perspective, here we're talking about a defense mechanism, but there's also something else. Let me touch on that side as well. Now, you're saying that he had a childhood and adolescence where financial obligations turned into emotional servitude. If he possessed a truly compatible personality structure with this, the woman would have had a very harmonious and deeply fulfilling relationship with the man in every aspect. In other words, during his youth and adolescence, he would have learned to be emotionally compatible with these financial obligations in accordance with her personality structure. Naturally, she would have reflected this in the relationship. So why did this situation turn into a trauma for this woman? Because once again, we're emphasizing personality at the core. What is this personality? Our structures? For example, in our sessions, we often use the 5-factor personality inventory, which is reliable and valid over a long period. So what does this 5-factor personality inventory include? Our subscales, namely extroversion and introversion. There are subscales of responsibility, agreeableness, emotional stability, and openness to experience. So if personality is evaluated according to the scale, these are the 5 subscales. Most of this is innate, and on top of that, we give meaning to events through the experiences we have. In other words, what I'm simply trying to explain is this. We got into some technical details, it became a bit complicated, a little. Simply put, this is what I'm trying to explain. Personality is innate, for the most part. Whether the events we experience turn into trauma or not is determined by the meaning we assign to them in combination with our personality. Our personality and our perspective on the events we experience. So in this case, such a mismatch has occurred in these people. So here, the woman's character structure is also very important. I mean, the woman wants to stand on her own 2 feet, right? Clearly, she doesn't have a very outgoing personality because she is more introverted. Because her sense of responsibility is high. In other words, having a high sense of responsibility shows this. She acts in a planned and organized way, meaning she plans things out before starting and acts accordingly. You actually said this at the beginning of the conversation. She had a debt, but she had made a plan. She was going to pay it off herself. This woman's character wants to stand on her own 2 feet. If her boyfriend had noticed this, he should have given her space. Yes, that would have been difficult for him. This is already the difficult part of relationships. You know, we might not be able to build good relationships by applying the templates we know to them. We need to get to know the other person and discover what they need. Isn't that right, actually? So in summary, this situation shows us that, like paying off her debt for her, or I don't know, instead of opening a business for her, if he had asked what she needed, whether she needed help or not, it would have made her feel better, or if he had approached her by saying something like this. Wow, you are such a strong woman. I admire your stance and effort against life and so on. Things that touch her soul directly. Because people who plan and act need more emotional support.
Feeling the burden of debt that her father made her feel was disturbing. A little bit with Yuchel, for me too, yes. I mean, the reason it became such a problem is because her current partner, her ex-partner, also made her feel this way.
Of course, that's exactly what I'm saying. Her personality structure and the way her father made her feel indebted created a dynamic that was spiritually unsuitable for her, and it turned into a trauma. She couldn't adapt until she got rid of it. She struggled a lot, and it turned into a trauma. So, While getting out of that process, she probably said something like this. Let's see. She probably said, I will never fall into such a situation again in my life. This is very difficult for me. In fact, the foundation of one's character is laid at birth. Its development continues with adolescence. It's something that happens as one moves toward forming relationships. All right, let's wrap it up like this. Let's not drag out the topic too much. Now, what do we actually see here? As I just said, we think we know it all. We shouldn't expect a new relationship we've just started, or the relationship we're in, to develop just by applying the templates we've learned to it. Actually, the real thing here is being able to get to know your partner and being able to adapt. What does this ability to adapt include? You have to change yourself. This can be a big compromise. For example, things like respecting them, respecting their boundaries, and so on. For instance, I'm also an extrovert. My spouse is also a very outgoing person. But sometimes when I feel overwhelmed or suffocated, for example, not attending someone's invitation is, according to him, rude. But sometimes when I feel really overwhelmed and suffocated, I can say, for example, I'm going home. Being able to create that space is what's important. Or if he can't give me that space and says, come on, let's go. Just join this one too. We won't stay long. Do this for me. I can adapt to him. This is actually what we mean by adaptation. Do everything right, do it well, but then there's nothing that expects the past to get better. We should look at it more from this perspective. At that, what about you?
Have you ever felt like you were being watched in the name of kindness? Or without them realizing it, are you the self-sacrificing one in this moment? Share this kindness test with us in the comments. Let's talk about it. And if you enjoyed this in-depth analysis, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel.
I'll see you later.